during the panel discussion at annual conference, you said a comment, made a little sound bite that I really latched onto. And you said it's as easy and hard as friendship. And while it's a great quote and it's a great sound bite, I really appreciate it. I think you probably meant more. There's more there that you meant. Can you kind of unpack that for us and kind of explain to us, what you really meant by that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that because some of the feedback that I got afterwards was like when people heard that comment, part of what they felt was that it felt like too easy of an answer almost, And I think the truth is, if I were to think through that again, I would sort of, two things. One, I would change that to say it's as easy as friendship and community and as hard as friendship and community. And part of what I mean by that is that kind of like a real friendship where you really kind of understand and listen and make space for the other person in a way that they feel like they have their own space within a community. And so like on a friendship level, I think of examples of that. So if you really become friends with someone, and you want to meet them like at a restaurant, for example, right? Yeah. Like you're going to choose a restaurant that hopefully both of you like. Not that one it's like, well, this is my favorite restaurant and the other person can't eat the food at that restaurant, right? Or sometimes actually as a friend, you're going to go to a restaurant that you don't particularly care for, but it's your friend's favorite restaurant. Mm-hmm. And so you make that sort of sacrifice. And so sort of that idea of like creating space. One of the examples that I think of in kind of my own life that I think is sort of an illustration of this about the community piece is with my wife and I in our home. And so my preference when I would move into a house would be I'd take every room and I'd paint every wall some bold color, and have this the whole house would be all these bold colors. And my wife's preference would be all white, right? And so once we got married, okay, well, we kind of want to have community together, live together. How are we going to make this work? So, in our we have one red wall in our dining room, right? And other rooms that sort of have white walls, but we figure out ways to bring in the kind of bold colors, like a red couch or something, And so the house that we live in is a house that probably neither of us would, if we were living on our own, it would not be the house we had. But since we want to do life together, it's a house that somehow reflects both of us. And so when I say that it's as easy and as hard as friendship, I'm sort of getting at that kind of idea of making space for the other. And because sometimes I feel in our churches, you get the sense that we want a young adult or somebody else to come and be part of what we do, but we want them to do what we do the way that we've done it and to like the things that we like, and instead of trying to make space for where they are and who they are in an authentic way. So I think that if I were to unpack that that's more of what I mean when I say it's as easy and hard as friendship. Yeah. That kind of friendship where you really listen, know the other person, and create that space for them, to change what the community feels like.
I like the bold colors.
Yeah. I can't paint in my house. My wife saw me paint this one room with this bright blue once, and I've lost painting privileges now. But to take us back to the actual topic at hand.
Yeah.
Well, I think of young adults in bold colors. That's how I'll make the connection. So how can young adults then and other members of the church build relationships so that there is the opportunity and the space to have difficult conversations?
Yeah, I think that from what I understand of my own sense of young adults, millennials, and for myself, really that begins with a sense of kind of belonging, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of, not only my own experience, but the things that I've read about young adults, it's sort of, belonging first. And then the other pieces about belief and about kind of that dialogue. So I think that really that means how do you create a relationship where people feel that they belong and are kind of welcomed as they are, and I think, and with a lot of listening, and I think that's what forms that basis for then those more difficult conversations.
Yeah. And so just to kind of get at the opposite, can you share a time in which the lack of a relationship, or maybe the fact that those relationships weren't formed as well as they needed to be, hindered those difficult or hard conversations from happening?
Yeah, I think for me it's more of like when I think about that, I think of the non-conversations, right? So I can think of lots of times within the church or the community, when someone who already is beginning to feel a little bit sort of disconnected or engaged, that some kind of difficult conversation or topic kind of hits them, or they're wrestling with that. And so what happens is that becomes just sort of this added piece that makes them disengage more. And so all of a sudden they're disengaged from the community. I think of someone in our community right now, church just recently, who had really disengaged, and later kind of second or third hand, I found out it had to do with sort of part of the reason was some issues around kind of how the church is dealing with homosexuality, but that conversation had never happened, right? Like the person had just sort of withdrawn. And so for me, what I think it's more of that sense of it's not sort of like they had these hard conversations and everybody walked away mad. Yeah. It's more of like that lack of relationship means that the conversation never happens.
Thank you for talking about that relationality aspect and just being willing to understand how difficult that can get to be.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you guys experience that too. I mean, if you're in a community or like you feel like somebody sort of already kind of respects you or has accepted you, like you're much more willing, right?
Right.
I mean, right? You can probably think of that.
Yeah, and I can think of situations where, and this is a third-party story, not my own, but a friend of mine who had a volunteer with her youth ministry, and that volunteer was also struggling with how the United Methodist Church was handling homosexuality and sexuality in general. And she had that really hard conversation with my friend, and they had a great relationship and they were able to talk about it, but ultimately she just couldn't get past the fact how the United Methodist Church was handling it, and ultimately she left the church. And it wasn't a matter of they left amicably, that they were still friends outside of the church. They were able to have that hard conversation, and unfortunately weren't able to resolve it. But I think both of their faith and their relationship with one another was stronger than it had been before they had the conversation.
Right.
So, but it was after years of working together in youth ministry and retreats together and Sunday school together and planning together, building that deep relationship and understanding and knowing each other, that they were able to have that really hard conversation. And I applaud them for sitting down and having that. And it wasn't a one time, let's talk about this over coffee for 45 minutes. It was months of ongoing conversation that they had with one another. And to just really wrestle together with that, I think, is really what we are called as Christians to do. And to that end, I wonder, what are some aspects of the Methodist or even Christian faith that can help us to model these relational conversations to society as a whole? I'll throw that out to both of you.
Yeah, whenever I think about that, and your story just brought that up so well, I think about the term discipleship that we're always using so much in our church, and it's such an important part of being Wesleyan Christian, of being Methodist, of this idea that we are always working towards this more perfect, more real faith that we all share together. And discipleship is a really big fancy word for what we've been talking about, of just being in relationship with each other and being able to be willing to go through the ups and downs and the difficulties that come with sharing yourself with another person. So just the idea of discipleship and being willing to follow Jesus and follow Jesus together with each other is something that I think that the Methodist Church can model, especially as we deal with these difficult and hard issues.
And I would think of, if you wanted to kind of think about it from like Wesley, like his sermon, The Catholic Spirit, would be sort of like the go-to one in his sermons. You could Google it online or whatever, and where he talks about this idea of, he really kind of talks about this idea of being able to be clear about who you are and kind of what you believe, while also having love and charity for others of differing opinion. and how to the ideal of being able to hold those things together. So not having to sort of not have your own personal opinions, but also being able to have charity and love towards those who differ on non-essentials. And so anyway, so I think that would be that's a good place to kind of look for in terms of United Methodist kind of histories as well.
Yeah, and at the risk of getting off into Methodist geek too much, but I just think of the term connectionalism, and it shows so much of doing that, having that Catholic spirit of being willing to have our own ideas, but going together and believing that by working together as a group of Christians, all focused on Jesus Christ, we may have differing opinions, but we can all go together. I mean, I can think of things like annual conference and the conversations that go there, or even general conferences, and those conversations can be difficult, and not everyone likes the way that they work out, but it is a way that we work together to believe that through relationship that we can all follow on this path of discipleship towards Christ.
And we have this heritage here to access. I mean, we have it laid out for us. It's just a matter of remembering and going back and saying, we have the framework for these conversations, and let's just take a step away maybe from the emotional aspect of it and think about, how do we love one another, and how do we love Christ through each other?
Yeah. And I think most of our churches actually at a local level, I mean, the churches that I know have been part of actually do a fairly good job of figuring out how to do that on a local level. In terms of, I think as I got older and started to really have conversations, I realized that not everybody in the church I grew up had the same opinion about things, and somehow they figured out how to be in community together and do ministry together and have unity on the essentials and diversity in the non-essentials, So, I think we have a heritage of that. Yeah.